What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do? What'll I do when I am wondering who is kissing you? What'll I do? What'll I do with just a photograph to tell my troubles to? When I'm alone with only dreams of you that won't come true, what'll I do?
Hello. Well, I'm happy to present a new book, and it's really good. It's called Burma Sahib, and it's by Paul Theroux, who is now 82 years old, and this novel just came out January 2024 from my library. And what it is about, it's about George Orwell. Before he was George Orwell, when he was Eric Blair, and he just is graduating from Eton in England, and his dad, who Eric Blair, George Orwell's dad, was a opium inspector or something. He had this career in India inspecting opium for their opium trade. There was, the British Empire was largely built on opium, apparently. There's a new book about the opium trade with the British Empire, or all the colonial opium trade, that I reserved in the library. It's a new book, and I'm going to read that to find out more about this opium stuff, because I know nothing about it. And that's what this novel is really good for. It enlightened me to stuff I knew nothing about. I knew what goes on is that Eric Blair, young Eric Blair, is encouraged by his dad to join the service, basically, and sign up to be a colonial cop in Burma. And so that's what he does. Burma was a British colony from, I looked it up earlier. I think it was 1830s until until 1948. In around the 1930s, they've set up a different thing where Burma was independent but really still in control, probably kind of like Canada was or is, or what, I don't know. Anyway, I know nothing about the British Empire, clearly, and so I'm finding out about it, and this novel really helped, because, it was about this kid. He's 19 years old, and instead of going to college, his dad encourages him to join become this cop in Burma. So we start out, as I'm saying, I'm learning all this stuff. We start out with his ocean voyage, and I sort of thought, well, you got to get to Burma, you're probably going to go around Africa or something, So no, go through the Suez Canal, duh. And the Suez Canal was constructed between 1859 and 1869 when it was completed, and it's 120 miles long. That stuff wasn't in the book. I looked that up on Wikipedia. So Yeah, so he's going, yeah. So you go through the Mediterranean and go through the Suez Canal and whatever into the Indian Ocean around there. So, it's a lot less of a trip than going all the way around, the Horn? Is that called the Horn? Or is that in America? I think it's the Horn, yeah. Horn of Africa, of course. So they go around to, I guess on the way to South Africa, they stopped in South Africa and, took over that place too. So, I don't know how all this went down, but so he's this cop, and he has to stay there. He's there for 5 years. He has to stay there because you can't, if he quits, he has to pay for his passage, which is probably pretty expensive to go all the way to Burma from England. And Burma was also a it was a province when they first did all this. It started out as a province of India, and had their own little little colonial governor and stuff. So yeah, he lands there, and it's really a novel that has a lot of alienation in it, because he's like, he doesn't like really any of the other people, the other colonial types there, because they're horrible, and some of them have been there for years and years and years. I mean, this goes on forever. He has his mother's brother lives in Burma, and they've been there for years and years and years. His mother was born there, but then moved to England. So his mother, he has to go up and look up his relatives in this other town in Burma. He's sent to one place first for his training, and then another place, and another. They keep moving him around, and he's not really good at being a cop. He doesn't like it, but he actually, it sort of forces you to do horrible stuff on its own, taking a job like this, and seeing what would happen if you don't participate. So they're doing all this horrible stuff. They're like caning these people, whacking them with canes and causing them to bleed, and which is just like eating. So it's like this, something really sick about this colonial system that England had going on with the males sent to these private, public schools on their own, where they whip each other with canes, and then they become the leaders of this colonial system all over the world. So he's always kind of hiding. He's a reader, so so that's also not some. Well, he does speak to a few other people who were readers and actually get some books from them. I listened to Paul Theroux in an interview. That's how I heard about this book. I don't remember the name of the podcast right now, but I'll put it on the screen. And that's how I came upon this book, where I listened to him talk about the book. And he said that how he researched the book is one of the things he did. He read what Orwell would be reading then. So the books that are mentioned, a lot of Jack London, surprisingly. I didn't expect that. Of course, I think Jack London died in 1915 or something, quite young, actually. But, Jack London was this socialist writer that also wrote these adventure stories like Call of the Wild and so forth. But while he's in Burma, he's reading Jack London, The People of the Abyss, which and ends up turning out to be something which is about Jack London disguising himself as, a hobo. and integrating with just regular, street people or homeless people and that sort of thing. And so that's what, during the course of the story, that's what Eric Blair wants to do as well. He wants to, after all this horrible system he's in, he just wants to vanish and get out of the whole thing and go into the other half of the world, which is the poor people, as he's been, oppressing them all this time as an agent for this system. So, there's also interesting things. He has to be involved in a hanging. And there's a part where they're talking about the hangings, and they were so systematic with everything. There's this chart. I have the chart. I'll show you the chart. There's this chart of how much of the person being executed weighs, and therefore how long the drop has to be in order to kill him. So that's kind of fascinating. Like so many stone, it's like this many feet that has to drop. And because when you hang someone, if you don't drop them far enough, they just suffocate and choke to death. They don't. The proper hanging is you open a hatch or dump them off something with the rope around their neck, and they fall a certain distance enough to break their neck and kill them, and that's how it's done. So there's this part where he has to hang somebody, and this big chart that they have. He's getting humiliated a lot. He's not playing along. He doesn't he doesn't want to. They have these clubs. Every town has this club where the British guys basically and their wives, whatever, they have women there too. Their families move there. So he has they have their wives, and they basically these social clubs where they go and drink and BS. So there is also this part about women. And this has to do with his relatives, because finally he does go see his relative. He has his Uncle Frank, and his grandmother actually is still living. So he goes to this town to visit his grandmother, and this is like a kind of hard trip for him, because these people formerly were doing really well. There's a story where he talks about where the uncle, Frank, talks about his father, and his father did really well in Burma in the lumber trade, and actually became a shipbuilder, and there's a whole story about him building the ship, and a big mansion that the shipbuilder built, and that's where his mother was born, apparently, in this big mansion. But by the time that George Orwell sees it, this is all during the 20s. This is 1922 until 1927 is when he's there. So he spends all the roaring 20s in basically out in this, horrible place. It's very, very hot as well. So, and they're all dressed like British guys, So, and they dress for dinner. We dress for dinner, Formal wear out in, Burma, dressing for dinner, where it's hot. So yeah, he goes and visits his family, his uncle and all that, and he's like really shocked and appalled. One thing is, that they've kind of gone native. So he has a cousin who is, half Burmese and half English, and this is shameful. So this colonial thing going on. Of course, now they can't. They're not supposed to engage with the locals, and of course they do. And Eric Blair, George Orwell, also is doing this. And but anyway, his uncle, he has this half Burmese, cousin who doesn't really realize that she's this shameful thing. She thinks, it's all normal, and she's British, basically. And Grandma, who dies in the course while he's there, and he goes to her funeral. But they're kind of a problem for him, because he always has to hide his relations. He doesn't want the other dudes to know that his relations have gone native like this. I mean, this is shameful, So he, there's the involvement with the women who are available and are taken. He has there's a prostitution situation that goes on. There's this place he goes there for some, and then he has a couple of keeps. Now your keep is a local woman who works in your house or whatever, and you also engage with in the engageable kind of ways that men and women do. I don't know what you're allowed to say on YouTube anymore, so I'm being euphemistic, even though I'm not monetized. I don't think I ever want to be monetized. So he has these women, and that's a pretty sad part of the story here, in that he does take on, I think there's two women he lives with in these towns where he's stationed. And basically he's living with them, and they're like a couple, and they don't kiss, but they sniff their faces, because the locals don't like to kiss. But then he leaves. So he leaves, and one of them is very, very upset. Well, two of them are very, very upset. One causes a big scene, which I won't tell you about. It's in the novel. There's stuff in the novel I'm not going to tell you about, because I think you should read it, because it's really, really entertaining and engaging. It's this, the hero's journey here is really, really well told and quite interesting, because it's a young hero, and he does turn from this one kind of thing to this other kind of thing. He certainly goes off the whole British Empire. So he does have a couple of friends. He ends up meeting some of the locals and being friends with them. He helps out a guy who he meets with the elephants. There's elephants. And there's a situation where there's a rampaging elephant, and he has to shoot the elephant, or he thinks he has to shoot the elephant, which ends up being a big shame thing for him as well, because elephants are really valuable, and he could have got somebody to come and ride the elephant away, or treat the elephant better, so he wouldn't have to shoot him, and stop the situation. The elephant had stepped on another guy in its rampage through the little town there. So I need to read probably more Paul Theroux. I haven't even seen the movie or the series of The Mosquito Coast, and I actually was looking it up and found that Paul Schrader actually wrote the screenplay for the Mosquito Coast, and I really like the work of Paul Schrader, so I'll have to look up the movie and watch it, even though Harrison Ford is in it. So what else do I have to say about this? It's just really, really good. They're not settler colonials. This isn't like the American thing. That's not like they're just using it for the resources mostly, and Burma being right next door to India. There's talk of Gandhi a little bit. Other things he's reading. Not only is he reading the Jack London, he also reads Martin Eden, which is another Jack London novel that I read. I used to read. I read Jack London stuff quite many years ago, and I really like this stuff. He also reads Huxley, Aldous Huxley, which is interesting because Aldous Huxley and George Orwell are often sort of spoken about in the same sentence, which is basically, okay, who had it right? George Orwell with 1984 or Huxley with Brave New World. Well, it turns out that Huxley was his instructor, one of his instructors, a French instructor at Eton. And so he's reading Attic Hay by Aldous Huxley, and he doesn't really like that, and he thinks I can write a better book than this. He also reads E.M. Forster's Passage to India, which I also have not read, and he says this is all fake. This is E.M. Forster did not see anybody get whipped, did not see anybody get hung, this kind of stuff. So he is convinced that he's going to write a better novel, and he starts writing. First he thinks he's going to be a poet, so he starts with poetry, and he's not really a poet, and he starts in writing a novel about being in Burma, which ended up being Burmese Days, which was published in 1934. So Burmese Days is waiting for me downtown at the library, and I'll pick it up next week and read that. So we got more of that coming up. He has an affair. Now that's also, he falls in love and has an affair. That's What'll I Do, the Irving Berlin song I introduced this with. He has an affair with a married woman there, and they are very energetic and very much enjoying one another and meeting on the sly, and she dresses up as a male with a helmet and everything, and comes on a horse to meet him at his place when she can get away. I guess her husband, is also, I think he's a businessman or something. Anyway, he's often away, doing manly stuff, and so she's available to him. So he has an affair with her, Mrs. Jellicoe, and that ends up he ends up kind of shaming himself, and she sort of calls him out for it. One of the things he does, he I don't know if it was the killing the elephant or whatever. One of the other, I think it was the killing the elephant, which brought him ridicule by everybody. So anyway, he has to leave, keeps having to leave, and they get separated. First they meet in one town, then they hook up again in another town, and ultimately they get separated. And he is completely heartbroken by this and misses her a great deal, and doesn't go to the other places where he engages with women, the commercial places, for a while, but because he is holding himself for her, and he wants that. He wants the love and affection and that kind of connection instead of the sex and whatever comes from the performance of the commercial sex with the commercial with a person who has been prostituted. A lot of prostitution appears in novels, basically older ones. I don't know that much about it, really. I've not engaged that much. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell a story on myself. When my mother died, and I was 26 years old, she died down in Florida, and I was in a small town in Vermont when she died, or upstate New York, right near Vermont. So I went down, of course, to Florida, and my brother was down there. He lived down there. He was 6 years younger. And, South Florida, Broward County, was like Sodom and Gomorrah, as opposed to Vermont. like there was all these like sex things everywhere, and prostitution stuff. And so anyway, I did go to one thing like that or two while I was down there. And one was a massage thing, and it's like, okay, put my hand where you want me to massage, sort of toward the end. And so then you put their hand where you want, for the happy ending thing. So so there was that, and then there was another thing where we went into a separate room, and in that one, I just did something oral, and she didn't do anything really, and that was kind of like quick. And so, yeah. So I have never really with a prostitute, so and probably I'm not going to at this point. But you read books about men, and there's all this stuff with the prostitutes, and their dad takes them, and so he talks about the women have it worse than anybody really in these situations, because if they have children, then the children are rejected by everybody. If they're half, they're going to be rejected by the locals, and they're going to be rejected by the British. So that's a no-win. They were not allowed to be having sex with the locals like that, or really engaging with them at all, fraternizing with them. And that's one of the things he failed at, because he ended up befriending people, and started taking their cause, and seeing that this is ridiculous. He completely went to the other side. I guess maybe except for the women thing, I don't know. I mean, we don't see him come up to that level of questioning oneself as far as the obvious exploitation of this sexual thing that is connected to the colonial thing, but is also this separate thing that men are doing all over the world, whether they're in a colonial situation or not. So that is not. I don't know if Orwell ever did this, looked at that kind of stuff himself in any of his writings or talks on BBC or anything. And I don't know where Paul Theroux got all that stuff, how he knew, whether he's reading diaries or whatever, how he knew or assumed that there were these women going on with him in Burma. So ultimately, he leaves. He gets Dunjay fever. He gets this fever thing that they have in the tropics, and so he gets a fever sickness leave. Of course, back on the boat back to England, and from there he just not going back. And then I guess from there he's becomes a writer and does the down and out thing soon after that. So thrusts himself into a whole different world, or the other side of the world he was in previously. And Blair has an argument with one of the local guys. He becomes a friend with this guy Thackeray. He's Indian actually, and that Thackeray, a guy who was Indian, actually is more into the empire than Blair is, because he says, well, the British are great. They brought all this trade. He's a businessman, so he wanted the business thing to go on. So Blair was shaking. In this discussion they have, Blair was shaking his head. He said, "The lie is that we're here to uplift our black brothers instead of to rob them. It is a natural lie, but it corrupts us in ways that you can't imagine. There's an everlasting sense of being a scoundrel and a liar that torments us and drives us to justify ourselves night and day. it's at the bottom of it's at the bottom half of our beastliness to the natives. The hate that they keep building up in themselves for what they do to perpetrate the empire makes them more beastly as a circle of pain and horror happens within them and without them at the people who they have conquered and are enslaving. So that's an interesting mechanism going on there, and I think it's going on today in certain places around the world, and you can figure out what that is for yourself. And, like and subscribe. I hope you read this book because it's really good, and we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for watching.